There is a concept in forensic psychology called motivated reasoning. It is the tendency of the human mind to interpret new information in a way that confirms what it already believes and to discount evidence that challenges it. I have explained this concept to juries. I have used it in court testimony. I have written about it in peer-reviewed journals. I did not notice myself doing it for 11 months. My name is Seraphine Cole. I am a forensic psychologist at the federal courts in Chicago. I assess criminal defendants, their competency, their psychology, the question of who they actually are underneath the presentation they bring into a courtroom. I have spent 11 years studying how people deceive each other and themselves. My husband, Dominic Ashby, died on the 14th of February last year. The city of Chicago had its worst black ice event in 6 years that night, and his car left Lake Shore Drive at 11:43 p.m. The police report was thorough. The investigation found nothing suspicious. The accident was ruled an accident. I grieved, I rebuilt. I went back to work. I functioned at a level that my colleagues described as remarkable given the circumstances, and I accepted that description because I needed it to be true. Then the letters came. And everything I thought I understood about my marriage, my husband, and the 11 months I had spent grieving him turned out to be a room with a false wall. I want to take you through it, all of it, from the beginning, because the only way to understand what happened is to understand what I did not know I was standing inside of. And because somewhere out there is a woman who is standing inside of it right now, and I want her to see it before I did. I want to start here, not with the letters, not with the investigation or the grief or any of the things that came after. I want to start with a Sunday morning in our apartment because I think if you are going to understand everything else, you have to understand this first. The apartment was on the 14th floor of a building in Lincoln Park. We had lived there for 5 years. It had the particular density of a place that has been lived in honestly, books on every surface. A dining table we ate at maybe 3 times a week and used for everything else the rest of the time. A corner of the living room where Dominic kept the architectural models he was most proud of, and a separate corner where he kept the ones he thought he might revisit and never did. He made good coffee. That is a small thing to say about a person, but it is the kind of small thing that accumulates into a life. He made it in a French press, which he had strong opinions about, and he always made it slightly stronger than I preferred, and I never said so because I liked the ritual of it more than the specifics. He had a way of being in a room that made the room feel occupied differently. Not louder, he was not a loud person. Fuller, like he brought a particular quality of attention into whatever space he was in, and the space registered it. I am a person who studies people for a living. I assess them, categorize them, build clinical pictures of who they are and what drives them. I am good at it. I have been told I am better at it than almost anyone my colleagues know. I did not do any of that with Dominic. With Dominic, I just existed. That was the gift of it. 7 years, 2 apartments, the second better than the first. 3 holidays where something went slightly wrong and we laughed about it anyway. An argument about money that lasted a week and left no scar. A miscarriage in the second year that left 1, which we carried together in the private way of 2 people who have agreed that some things do not need to be performed for an outside audience. That is the marriage I am describing. I want you to hold it. because what comes after is only comprehensible against the weight of what it was. 11 months after Dominic died, I was back at work full-time, and I was, by every external measure, coping well. My caseload had returned to normal. I was seeing 8 defendants per week, producing reports, appearing in court when required. My supervisor had noted in my annual review that my assessments had lost none of their precision. My colleagues, on the rare occasions they asked how I was doing, accepted my answer without pressing because my answer was consistent, and I delivered it with the particular steadiness that people in professional environments are trained to read as genuine. I want to be honest about what that steadiness actually was. It was architecture. I had built a structure around the grief, and I was living inside it. Every morning, I got up at the same time. I made coffee in the French press that I now made for one, and I drank it at the kitchen table with a brief news summary on my phone, and I took the L train to the federal courthouse on Dearborn, and I did my job with precision, and I came home. On Sunday evenings, I called my mother in Atlanta, and I told her I was fine, and she told me I sounded tired, and I said everyone sounds tired at the end of a week, and she said that was true, and we talked about other things. The only person I did not manage was Imogen. Imogen Rios has known me since we were 22, and she has an unhelpful gift for identifying the gap between what I say and what is actually happening. Imogen, you're doing the efficient grief thing, aren't you? Seraphine, I don't know what that means. Imogen, it means you've filed it under processed and moved on, and you haven't actually let yourself feel the full weight of it, because feeling the full weight of it would temporarily impair your functioning, and you can't tolerate that. Seraphine, that is an extremely clinical diagnosis of a person who is simply doing their best. Imogen, that is what I just said. She was right, she usually is. But I was functioning. I was upright and present and doing the work. And then, on a Tuesday evening in January, I came home and found an envelope on my kitchen counter that I did not remember leaving there. The envelope had no return address. My name was written on the front in handwriting I did not recognize. Mrs. Ashby, not Dr. Cole, not Seraphine. Mrs. Ashby, which was the name I had never legally taken, the name I used only in certain private contexts, the name that Dominic called me occasionally in the way of a quiet joke between us, an acknowledgement of a formality we had chosen not to perform publicly. I did not think much of it in the moment. I assumed it had been misdelivered, that the building manager had left it on my counter rather than the correct apartment. I picked it up. I opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was a single sheet of ivory paper, folded in 3. The handwriting was small and careful, the kind of handwriting that belongs to someone who was taught to write by a person who cared about it. The letter began without salutation. It said, "I hope you kept the paint color in the study. Evening Shadow by Farrow and Ball, 3rd sample from the left at the shop on Michigan Avenue, which you both went back to 3 times before you decided. He loved the way it looked in the afternoon light, specifically around 4 o'clock, when the angle was right. He told me once it was the most beautiful color he had ever talked anyone into. I think he meant it as a compliment." I sat very still at that table for a very long time. The paint color was real. We had chosen it exactly as described. The shop on Michigan Avenue, 3 visits, the afternoon light, all of it exact. Specific in a way that could not be coincidence and could not be guesswork. But Dominic had not told anyone about it. Not in those terms, not in any terms I was aware of. It was not the kind of thing you mention. It was the kind of thing that lives inside a marriage and goes nowhere. I read the letter again, then a third time. I turned it over, blank on the back. I checked the envelope again for a return address or any identifying mark. Nothing. I set it down on the table. Then I picked up my phone and I thought about calling Imogen, and then I decided not to, because I did not yet have language for what I was feeling, and I needed language before I could hand it to someone else. I poured a glass of water. I sat with the letter until midnight, then I went to bed. I could not sleep. The second letter arrived 7 days after the first. I had spent those 7 days building a reasonable explanation. Someone who had known Dominic, a colleague, a friend I had not met, someone from the architecture firm who had been in our apartment, had written to express a form of sympathy that was unusual but not impossible. People grieve in unexpected ways. People sometimes share small, intimate memories of the people they have lost as a kind of tribute. I had constructed a version of events that was strange but explicable. The second letter made that construction impossible. It arrived on a Tuesday on my kitchen counter again. Same ivory paper, same careful handwriting, same absence of return address. This letter was shorter. It said, "He told me the name you had chosen, for the child you lost and the child you hoped for after that. Marin, if it was a girl, after your grandmother. He was proud of that name. He said you had both known it immediately, the way you know some things without discussion." I put the letter down. I put it down and I sat back in the chair, and I pressed my hands flat on my thighs, and I breathed carefully, the way I sometimes advise clients to breathe when they are on the edge of losing control of a session. The name Marin had come from a conversation between Dominic and me on a Thursday evening in October, 4 years ago, sitting on our balcony after dinner. I had talked about my grandmother. He had said the name was beautiful. I had said maybe someday. He had said yes, someday. I did not write it down anywhere. There was no record of it. I had not told my mother. I had not told Imogen. I had not told a single living person. The only way someone could know that name was if Dominic had told them. Dominic, who did not share private things. Dominic, who was the most contained person I had ever known in terms of what he allowed outside the boundary of our life together. Dominic, who had been dead for 11 months. I sat with the letter for a long time. And then I thought about something I had not thought about before, which was this. Who writes 2 letters about intimate details of a dead man's marriage to his widow, with no return address, with no explanation, with no apparent desire to be known? Not a friend paying tribute, not a colleague expressing sympathy. Someone with a purpose I could not yet see. I called Imogen on Wednesday morning and asked her to come over. I did not tell her why. She came at noon with a bag of food she knew I would not have bought for myself, and she did not ask questions until I put the letters on the table in front of her. She read the first one, then the second, then the first again. She did not say anything immediately. Imogen is a federal prosecutor, and she has the prosecutor's discipline of not speaking before she has processed what she is holding. I know how to read her silences, and this one had weight in it. Imogen, how many people knew about the paint color? Seraphine, nobody. We didn't tell anyone. It wasn't something we discussed outside. Imogen, and the name. Seraphine, nobody. not even my mother. She put the letters back on the table. She looked at them for a moment longer. Imogen, Seraphine, what? Imogen, these letters are addressed to Mrs. Ashby. Seraphine, I know. I assumed it was informal. It was what Dominic called me sometimes. Imogen, you never changed your name. You're still Dr. Cole professionally and legally. You're Seraphine Cole on every document. Who knew you as Mrs. Ashby, specifically? Who outside the marriage would have used that name for you? I had not thought about it in those terms. I sat with it. Nobody. I could not think of a single person outside our marriage who consistently addressed me as Mrs. Ashby. It was an internal thing, a private small formality that lived between the two of us. Seraphine, someone who knew him very well. Imogen, or someone he talked to very openly, about very private things. She looked at me across the table with the particular directness she uses when she wants to say something that she knows I am not going to like. Imogen, Dominic talked to someone about the most private parts of your life. Someone we don't know about. Someone with no return address who started writing to you before you would have had any reason to be writing letters to. We need to find out who that is. I knew she was right. I had known it since the second letter. I had just needed someone else to say it out loud to make it real. I found all the letters that evening. That was the thing I had not thought to do, look for more. I went through the kitchen counter first, then the pile of mail I had not processed, which I will admit had grown considerable since Dominic died, because dealing with mail had been his thing, the small domestic administration that he had absorbed without fuss. In a box in the study where I had been putting things that required attention later, I found 4 more envelopes. Same ivory paper, same handwriting. 9 letters in total. I laid them out on the dining table in the order they had arrived, which I could establish because I had the dates I found each one roughly in memory. And the postal codes on the postmarks were different for each one, which I noted and would return to. And then I looked at the dates. I looked at the first one again. The postmark on the first letter was dated the 9th of November. Dominic died on the 14th of February. The letter had been sent 3 months and 5 days before my husband was killed. I counted again and again. I looked at the dates on the next 6 letters. All of them predated his death. The last one before he died was sent on the 7th of February, 1 week before the accident. The first one that arrived after was the letter I had found on my kitchen counter in January, which turned out to have been sent 4 months prior, sitting in the postal backlog. 7 letters sent while Dominic was alive, 2 sent after he died. Someone had been writing to me for months before he was killed, describing the interior of my marriage from the inside with precision and intimacy while my husband was still alive. I sat at the dining table with 9 ivory envelopes spread out in front of me, and I thought about what that meant. Someone had access to the most private details of our life together. Someone Dominic had spoken to. And that someone had begun writing to me as if preparing me for something, as if laying a trail before the accident that killed him. This was not a tribute. This was not sympathy. This was communication from someone who knew what was coming.